Hey girl, my name is Anel. Welcome to the Brave and Her podcast, where we inspire, empower, and motivate by sharing our stories of bravery. I strongly believe that by sharing our stories, we open ourselves to healing, but also serve to give hope and inspiration to those who are dealing with a tough situation. We will talk about all topics under the sun. Now let's hear your stories of bravery. Hey girl, thank you for being here. In today's podcast, we have my friend Viviana Maldonado. She is the founder of The HIPAA Life, a career blog for Latinas. And she's here today to talk to us about her journey dealing with cultural identity and the struggles that come with it. Hi, Viviana. How are you?
Hi, Anel. I'm doing well. Thank you so much for having me.
Thank you for being here, and thank you for being brave to share your story. Do you want to start by just giving us, a little bit background on you, or just a little bit about yourself?
Absolutely. My name is Viviana Maldonado, and I'm going to go way back to the beginning. So I was born in South Texas in a town called McAllen, Texas, in the Rio Grande Valley. I was born in the early 1980s, and I lived there for about 9 years. So while living there, I had a lot of family. Obviously, my parents were immigrants from Mexico. So my life was full of family events, and we would go to Mexico to visit family. And I mean, my life was just so filled with love and family and culture. And then all of a sudden at the age of 9, my parents moved us, my sister and I, to Lexington, Nebraska, which is a rural community in the state of Nebraska. So it's right in the middle. And I lived there for about 9 years. I lived in that town for about 9 years. And then I moved to the eastern part of the state, and that's where I went to school, and I started my professional life. I am currently living in Los Angeles, California, and I've lived here for about 6 years. So that's a little bit about my background as far as where I was born, where I grew up, and a little bit about my heritage.
Oh, so you're here to talk to us about your experience or your journey with cultural identity, being from a Mexican family and moving to areas where maybe the Mexican or Hispanic heritage is not really, I guess, popular. Do you want to tell us about your journey with your cultural identity?
Yeah, so I'll go ahead and start out with when we first moved. So my parents were missionaries from Mexico. They were Baptist missionaries, and they received a call in 1990. They received a call letting them know that there was going to be a meatpacking plant that was about to open in Lexington, Nebraska, and they needed their help. So my dad talked to my mom about it, and they discussed moving, and they decided to move the family. So they moved us there. When we arrived, we were one of the first newly Latino, well, how do I say it? One of the first Latino families that moved because of the plant. So there were Latinos that were there that I think moved in the 30s and the 40s, and they were, for the most part, fully assimilated. So then the new wave of Latinos went in the 1990s, and we were one of the first families that went there. So we got there in August, and the plant opened in November. Once the plant opened, there was an influx of people coming in to work at the plant. So as you mentioned, it was predominantly Caucasian, and all of a sudden this town exploded with people, right?
Yeah.
As you can imagine, the school system, the healthcare, everything completely changed. So when we arrived, the town, I think it had about 5,000 people currently it has about 10,000, and it is predominantly Latino. And now there are a lot of Somalian refugees and Sudanese refugees as well. So when I was growing up, right, when I moved there at the age of 9, that's when everything happened. And my parents were a big part of that because they were there to do mission work. So they were one of the only Latino families that actually did not have any ties to the plant. Everybody else was there because of the plant. So my parents became the town's social workers. They became the town's ESL teachers. They were, goodness, my mother helped translate and interpret for so many people. I mean, they did it all. And I was watching everything unfold. So it was very interesting because when I arrived, I was one of the only Latinas in my class. And all of a sudden, year after year, more and more would be coming in. And it was a very interesting thing to watch and to see and to experience because I was a part of it as well, right?
Yeah. And how did you feel when like people around you didn't really look like you? I mean, there were people starting to get there that looked like you, but when you first got there wasn't that many people that looked like you or had the same heritage or culture as you. So how did you feel?
Yeah, so that's a really great question. As soon as I got there, I felt very welcomed. The people were so friendly, so nice. I remember I made friends right away, and I had my group of friends in the 4th grade, and coincidentally, some of those friends became my damas for my quinceañera.
Yeah.
So they were a big part of my life during my elementary and junior high years. So they were really interested in our culture. They were interested in knowing more about who we were. Granted, not everyone was like this, but fortunately, my friends have always been very open-minded. To this day, a lot of my friends, the people that I met in 4th grade, that the very first day of school, they tell me that they write about me. They use me as an example when they're writing their school projects.
Oh, that's cool.
Or when they're just talking to people every day. So I think one of my friends is a therapist, and she is a bilingual therapist in her practice as well. And people do not believe her when she tells them that she's been part of a quinceañera. They do not believe her.
That's pretty cool.
Yeah, so I had a pretty positive experience with, I guess you could, with Caucasians there, especially at the beginning. Because of who my parents were, they were also very involved in the community. So a lot of my friends like to come over to our house, and they would like to learn. They like to learn about Mexican culture and eat the food. So for the most part, it was a positive experience.
So at what point did you experience like some of the negative? Was it from people outside your family? Was it within your family? How did that happen?
Yeah, so as I mentioned, people kept moving into the town, right, year after year. And I do remember my parents sitting me down around the age of 11 or 12, right before I was going to go into junior high. And I remember them sitting me down, and they just said, you need more Hispanic friends. You need more Hispanic friends, and we're here to help the community, and you need to become friends with Hispanics. I said, okay. And I already had my friend group, right? So my parents pretty much told me that I had to make friends with the people that we were serving, or the kids.
Okay.
So I remember telling them, I said, okay, but I don't connect with a lot of them. It has nothing to do with them being Hispanic or at all. It's just I'm not connecting with them, right? They're not friendly. I'm not becoming friends with them. And I just remember it was so forced. And I remember telling them, just because our parents or grandparents were born in the same country doesn't mean that I have to be friends with everyone.
Yeah.
And they didn't care. They just wanted to force these relationships. So I guess I had to do my best and try to befriend people that I wasn't connecting with at all. So,
do you know why? Maybe was it because maybe they were into different things than you? Your interest was different, or I don't know, your likes, things that you wanted to do, your vision, maybe your goals or something. What was it that was different?
So during the junior high years, I think the main thing was they were newcomers, but so was I, right? You have to remember we all were new to that town. So since I was one of the first ones that arrived, I had already established my group of friends.
Okay.
I don't know if that had something to do with them all sticking together and not becoming friends with anybody else. They wanted to become their own group.
Okay.
And also, it was almost as if they were self-isolating. And I don't blame them because a lot of them were coming from Mexico. A lot of them were coming from California. So it was a huge culture shock. So when you go into an environment such as the one that we were in, you tend to gravitate to your comfort zone and gravitate to what you know. I didn't have that option. I was thrown in and I just had to adapt, right? I had to deal with the situation. So when I went in, there were no Latinos for the most part. I was one of the only ones. So I think that had a lot to do with it as well. In hindsight, now thinking about it, it really was just about self-preservation and being comfortable.
So you mentioned that you weren't connecting with the Hispanic kids because, when you got there, you were kind of thrown in and you adapted to your environment, and, the friends that you made were mostly Caucasian, right? Because you weren't connecting with the Hispanic kids. Were you judged or criticized by the culture? And also, did you feel like you were giving up on, part of you and part of, like your culture because of that?
Yes, I was absolutely judged. I feel that I was judged by everyone, even my parents at times. I remember my parents would say, why do you not have Mexican friends? Why you need more Hispanic friends? You need to date Hispanic boys or whatever. So yeah, I do think that I was definitely scrutinized and judged and called all sorts of names. I remember they would say, es que Viviana es muy chocante y muy presumida. And yeah, I was always questioned about my identity. People thought that I was trying to be somebody that I was not. And that's not the case at all. Right? I mean, I was judged for wanting to play sports. I was judged for wanting to be on the dance team. I was judged for having Caucasian damas. I was judged for not having Hispanic friends. I was judged for not speaking Spanish, even though I did know Spanish.
Yeah. And I think that's one of the major things that we have. I'm pretty sure it's not just now, but recently it's more talked about, right? About people that do not speak Spanish, are judged by others saying, you're not a true Mexican, or you're not a true, I don't know, Guatemalan or whatever, any Hispanic country, that you're not true to your culture because you don't speak Spanish.
Absolutely. I do think that that's a big problem. I have heard a lot of people struggling with their identity because of not being able to speak a language. So in my situation, I was fluent in Spanish. I spoke it in the home. I just didn't speak it at school because I didn't have a lot of Latino friends. So a lot of people didn't think that I would, Actually, a lot of people thought that I didn't want to speak Spanish. That's what it was. They thought that I was hiding a part of myself. And that's not the case. Not the case at all. I've always been a proud Latina. I've always loved my ethnicity, my culture. That has never come into question, not once in my life. I have never felt ashamed. On the contrary, I have felt nothing but pride. That's how my dad taught us, and that's how he raised us. So I think it's baffling that people actually thought that of me, that I was trying to hide somebody, or I was trying to hide my culture. I was trying to be somebody that I'm not. No, not at all. But what was I supposed to do? What was I supposed to do when people are calling me names and they had a perception of who I was? Yeah, they had this perception of who I was and who they thought I was trying to be.
And that's my next question. On how did you deal with this whole judgment about people trying to make you, feel like you're not Latina enough or you're not Mexican enough?
Absolutely. So at school, I ignored it. I really did not let it faze me at all. The only time it really bothered me was when I was getting it from my family. So when I was getting it from my family, that's when I said, okay, now you guys, now you're not supporting me. Now you're questioning what I'm doing. And I remember getting it from my dad, my mom, and then my sisters were young. So they would just parrot what my parents would say, And so I felt so alone. I felt so isolated. I couldn't talk to anybody about it if I couldn't even talk to my own family, right?
Right.
In hindsight, they understand. And I have had many conversations with them now, and they completely get it. They completely see it. But no, I was so misunderstood. But going back to your question, definitely at school, I did not let it bother me. I just said, all right, call me all the names you want. Think that I'm a horrible person and I don't like Latinos. Whatever. I'm still going to try out for the track team. I'm still going to try out for the dance team. I'm still going to try to do my best. I'm still going to go to dances. Yeah. Right?
And I
do that.
Yeah. And I think that's a very important message, not just, your cultural identity, but just your own identity. If you want something, if you like something, blocking out the noise of,
Absolutely.
Other people judging you, I think that's key, because once you start hearing that noise or that listening to other people's criticism, you won't go anywhere. You won't do the things that you want to do, and you just not be happy.
Exactly. And let me tell you, I was horrible at basketball. I was on the C team. And I want to say my mom would even say, oh, well, it's because you're Latina. And I would say, no, Mom, it's because I'm horrible. I'm horrible at basketball, but I loved it, right? I loved it. And I was one of the only Latinas, and I was always on C team. I was the last one picked, but it didn't matter. I was there. And yeah, there were times that it was uncomfortable. Absolutely. There were many times when certain things were uncomfortable. But like you just mentioned, I wanted to do it. And I wasn't going to miss an opportunity. So I was just there. And I want to share a story because one of the questions just triggered my memory. About a few years ago, I was having lunch with a friend here in California. And we've known each other for a long time. She's also from my hometown. When my parents would say, oh, you don't have any Latina friends, I would always say her name because she was one of my only ones. One of my only Latina friends. I met her at the grocery store. We worked together there. And she didn't judge me. She was the only one that didn't judge me. She was so nice. And we connected. Most importantly, right? We connected. So if I connect with someone, it doesn't matter what color you are, I'm going to be your friend. So I would always tell my parents, I would say, no, I have Mexican friends because she's my friend, right? She's so fun, but she is my friend. And I'm still friends with her. now we both live in California. We're great friends. We've been friends for over 20 years. And she said something to me over lunch that day. She told me that she always admired me for my bravery and the courage that I had to do what I did. Granted, we're not talking about anything big. We're talking about literally joining a basketball team or being on the dance team or being in choir. And she told me that she always wanted to do those things, but her friends would make fun of her. And her friends would call her a wannabe. And her friends would tell her that she wants to be white. So she didn't do it. So she said that this entire time she's always admired me. I had no idea. I really didn't know that's how she felt. And I didn't know that I was being such a trailblazer.
Yeah, well, for you, it might not seem like a big thing, because you did, like how she said, you had the bravery to do it. But for her and for many women or, men that, are listening or going through something similar like this, it's really hard to just go, I guess, away from your culture or away from, what your parents expect from you, away from what your family expects from you, your friends, or, even society. It's really hard to go away from that. And you did it, so it's great.
Yeah, and I didn't think I was doing anything extraordinary, but you're right. It is something that in that moment, it was extraordinary for a lot of people.
Yeah.
And I don't know if you would call it bravery. I don't know if you would call it courage. I don't know if it's just my personality, right? Because it's just what I wanted to do.
I think it's bravery. I think it's bravery because, despite of everyone judging you and I guess calling you names or, attempting to make you feel less up, you still did it. You still went ahead and did whatever you wanted to do.
Yeah. And funny enough, this friend during one of our other lunches asked me when I became so in touch with my Latinidad. And I said, what are you talking about? She goes, well, you're involved in so many organizations now and you do so much for the Latino community. And I told her, I said, I've always done this, or that's always been me. I have never been out of touch. I have always been a proud Latina, but that's not how I was perceived.
Right.
So that's really interesting to talk to her 20 years after that. She's my only Latina friend. She was my only Latina friend. So she's the only one that can give me that honest feedback.
Yeah. Because she saw what you went through, or, she experienced firsthand of, you going against culture.
Yeah. And she's just like me. That's why we get along. She is, she's very intelligent. I believe she was in drama. I think she was in drama when she was in high school. She loves to learn about different cultures. She lives here in California. So we have a lot in common.
That's great. Do you have any tips to give us on how to stay true to, to yourself and not to give in to culture pressure?
Yeah, I think first and foremost, you have to be comfortable with being uncomfortable. I don't want people to think that I was always comfortable in these spaces. That is not true. That is not true at all. I was very uncomfortable a lot of the times, but I knew that I belonged, right? If I want to run track, I'm going to run track. I may not be very good, but I'm going to do it. I was actually really good at track. So that's about it. I was bad at basketball. Good at track. And I was in choir. I was on the dance team. But, oh gosh, I could tell you so many stories of times where people really did make me feel like I didn't belong, right? Especially in basketball, because I didn't grow up playing basketball with these gals. And a lot of them had known each other for many years. So then here comes this Latina girl that just wants to play, but she's awful at it. And it's now getting in the way of their game, right?
Yeah.
So yo me metía. I didn't care. Like I'm going to be here. This is what I want to do. I may not be very good. So that's number one is you're going to be uncomfortable and it's going to hurt a little. But if you think it's worth it and if that's where you want to be, you're going to just have to work through it and really understand that you do belong.
Yeah, that's really great advice. Being okay with being comfortable or not. Wait, what did you say? Being uncomfortable, right? Being okay with being uncomfortable.
Yeah.
So I want to talk a little bit about the HIPAA Life blog.
Yes.
Can you tell us like what was the inspiration behind it?
The inspiration behind the HIPAA Life blog is really to create a sense of community between a lot of Latinas, especially professional Latinas, a place where we can come together, talk about our career obstacles, talk about challenges and things that have worked for us. So it is a storytelling platform. It is a blog, but I do want to feature women and I want to feature their stories. I feel that storytelling can have a big impact as opposed to just giving out tips. So that's really the inspiration behind the HIPAA Life. I feel that a lot of us, especially right now, are feeling very disenfranchised in our careers. We're feeling a little bit lost and we need a little bit more guidance. And so it's really just a place where we can inspire one another and all realize, hey, we're all jefas. We may not be managers, we may not be VPs, we may not be CEOs yet, but we all can take control of our careers. And we all are bosses in our own way.
Yeah. I like that. Because, I think like you said, you might not be, a manager or CEO or, like that title, right? But you're still the, I don't want to say owner, but you're still, the HIPAA of your life.
Yeah.
You're in control of your life.
Yeah. And you can do that in your personal life. You can do that in your career. You can be a leader. And I think that's one thing that I really want to convey to people is you can be a leader regardless of your level in any organization. You can learn those skills now.
Yeah. And you can also be a leader in a way where, you can also help someone else that's not maybe as advanced as you, help another Latina.
Absolutely. Right now, we just need leaders, period. And
yes.
That I don't mean managers or VPs. I mean leaders. We need people to lead.
Yeah.
And you're absolutely right. We need people to lead the new generation.
Yes, I was just going to say that.
Yes.
You can, like me, I'm in my 30s. I can, mentor someone that's in, college or high school and, just lead them to, a better, maybe better career opportunities, better, something better. You always try to help that, next generation to something better, right?
Absolutely. I agree.
And then, so what will you tell that woman who might be dealing with cultural identity right now?
Yeah, I do feel that a lot of us are dealing with this. I don't know what it is. I don't know why it's especially right now, but especially when it comes to being a Latina. I mean, do not let anybody tell you that you have to speak Spanish to be a Latina or that you have to be from a certain country to be Latina or you have to like certain foods. I mean, I just posted something on Instagram not too long ago about there is no right or wrong way to be a Latina.
Right.
So you just have to really be true to who you are and really not listen to all of the fluff that's out there. right? Because who are these people that are saying, oh yes, you're a Latina or you're not Latina enough? No, there's no such thing. So you're going to get scrutinized. You're going to get judged. That's not going to go away. That just will not get away. That will not go away, especially now where there's so much identity politics. It's actually going to get messier.
Yeah.
It's really going to get messier now with all of these, am I Hispanic? Am I Latinx? Am I Latine? Am I Latina? It's going to get so messy. So really just look inside of yourself. If you identify as Latina or whatever you want to identify, just really be strong in your own identity. I think that's the best thing I can say.
Yeah, I agree with that. Just, try to be comfortable with your own opinion of yourself.
Absolutely. Yeah. You cannot let anybody else affect you that way, because it's really not worth it. And as I mentioned, everyone will have an opinion. That's not going to go away.
Right. Either way you go, someone's going to have an opinion. And then I just wanted to add too, there's no such thing as a checklist. Okay, if I check everything on this list, I'm a Latina. There's no such thing.
Absolutely. Yeah. You can be a Latina who likes to run track and dance and be crappy at basketball.
Yeah. And you can be a Latina that, doesn't meet or doesn't stay in the statistics.
And I'm just going to put this out there because this is the experience that I had. But a lot of that was self-inflicted in the sense of it came from Latinos themselves, right? It came from within. And I think that's still an issue.
Yeah. And just to finish up, do you want to share your favorite Bible verse or quote? Or a song? It could be, I don't know. It could be a Bible verse. It could be a quote. It could be a song. Something that, keeps you inspired. A poem, short poem.
Yeah, so one of my favorite quotes is actually one from Steve Jobs. It's, the ones who are crazy enough to think they can change the world are the ones who do. So that's a quote that always inspires me. And even though I did not know this quote when I was younger, I do feel that I've lived it.
Yeah, I like that. That is so true. Okay, and so then now to now finish up, like the very last thing, how can we find you? How can we find the HIPAA Life podcast? Sorry, not podcast. How can we find you, and how can we find the HIPAA Life blog or Instagram? How can we just follow your journey?
Yes, my blog is thehefalife.com. And you can also follow me on Instagram at @thehefalife. And I would love to connect.
Yes, please go follow her. And I will put the links in the show notes. Well, thank you so much, Viviana, for sharing your journey and sharing, your experience with cultural identity. Thank you for being so brave. And thank you.
Thank you, Anel, for giving me this opportunity. It was a great conversation.
Thank you so much for listening. I hope this episode inspired you. If you like this podcast, please share on social media and tag me on Instagram @TheBraveandHer. I would love to hear your stories of bravery.